I noticed the two girls standing on the opposite street corner trying to look at a map of Toronto in the blowing wind. It was pretty funny. They were both holding down the map and obviously having difficulty finding whatever it was they were looking for. So when the lights changed, I decided to go offer some help. And as I approached, I could see that they were both cute, and especially this blonde who looked up at me with that bright sparkle in her eyes. So I gave them directions and asked if they wanted to go get something to eat. And I remember them looking at me as if to say, "Who is this loser?" And the brunette wasn't bad looking either. And, the way they were dressed, sharp, I figured they were from Toronto, but turns out they're from some small pulp and paper town up in northern Ontario. And we're just down to see a rock concert the next day, and I can't remember who it was at the time. But so they told me to wait and went to the far end of the sidewalk to discuss whether or not they were going to go with me. All the while, I was looking over their shoulder back at me and kind of laughing. They pranced back up and said that they were starving, so sure, they'd go get something to eat. It ended up costing me like $37, which is a lot at the time since I was only working part-time and still going to university. And but they ended up agreeing to go out with me later that night after I told them that I'd invite along a few friends. Now, naturally, I only invited my best buddy to come along, who I thought could hang out with her friend, which I'd hope would leave the blonde for me. And as it turns out, we're sitting in the restaurant in the booth, the blonde next to me, and after a half hour, I'm feeling little for her, but very attracted to this dark-haired beauty sitting across from me. And I think it was confusing for my friend who sat and watched as I spent my whole time talking and listening to his date. We sorted it all out in the restaurant washroom. So after dinner, we decided to go for a drive and show them the city, and then for a walk in the park. And, walking along the path under the trees, a warm spring night, that early summer aroma in the air, and just talking to her and hearing about her life in a small town, holding hands, lying on the grass, rolling around, kissing. I fell in love with her. And it was so sudden. I was only 19 at the time. I hadn't really had, a serious girlfriend before that. Certainly not anyone I had really strong feelings for, and not like the feeling I had when early the next morning we're still lying on the grass as the sun came up. And just like that. And I know it wasn't a crush because, by the time you're 19, you've had a few of those, and this was so different. And I really admired this girl when she told me, about her life and what she was trying to do in the future. And she just finished high school and was saving to go to the University of Toronto in the fall. And this weekend was going to be her only holiday of the year. And, we definitely made contact that night. And, I mean, intellectually, but I think, and it might be weird for me to say, but I think spiritually. That's not a word I would have used 8 years ago, but looking back, I think that's how I saw it at the time. And, there was a lot of passion, but nothing sexual. It's not that I didn't want to. I mean, I was 19, but as I recall, it didn't matter. I wanted to be around her. I just wanted to spend time with her. And that's what we did for the next 3 days, all day and all night, until she went home on the bus early Tuesday morning. And she promised she'd write, and she did. Long, perfumed letters, which I responded to faithfully. And we exchanged letters several times over the next 6 weeks, but I missed her, and I could not stop thinking about our first evening together. And that, her smile and the look in her eyes when she got excited, everything about her. So, one morning I decided to get up and go see her, surprise her. So I got out on the highway, hitchhiked 840 miles to where she lived. It took me 2 days to get there. One of those was in the rain. I arrived and went right to the place where she was working. And, just talk about the excitement, of anticipation, just all the thoughts that went through my head all the way up there, and the ideas I had about what we could do when I got there, and pictures in my mind from our first weekend together. So I waltz in there and plunk myself down on a stool by the counter. I don't see her at first, but then she comes out of the kitchen. And you know how there's times in your life when you can remember every single detail of a particular event? Well, that's how it was for me that day and remains with me today. I can still remember her coming out to the dining room with 2 plates of food, the sweat on her forehead, the blue waitress uniform with the red trim, that look in her eyes when she saw me, the type of shoes she was wearing, her bare legs and the muscular calves from running track, colors on the wall, the faces of the people eating there, everything. Absolutely everything. And the first thought I had when I saw her was just how crazy I was about this girl and how much I missed her, and how glad I was I made the trip. She looked at me and stopped. I guess you could say froze. She didn't say hello, just an awkward smile and just a minute look. So she took the plates of food over to a couple of customers and then came back over and stood in front of me, drying her hands nervously on her apron. And we made some small talk, but I could tell she was uncomfortable, and I thought maybe at first it was just she felt nervous because I had surprised her and she felt awkward talking at the restaurant. But we're standing there and eventually we're just out of words. And I'm thinking, like, this is so different from the first time we met. What was wrong? And we stood there in silence, and it had descended on us like a cloud, and our eyes were darting around the room behind me, and finally she said to me quietly that she couldn't see me. Well, what could she possibly mean? Did she mean that she couldn't talk to me on the job? And then it hit me. She wasn't saying that she couldn't talk now, but that she couldn't see me. And she stared at her shoes and leaned over and told me that she was going with someone in town. Now it was my turn to be shocked. And I was angry, hurt, just devastated. And finally I said to her, and none too quietly, well, what about the letters? And she didn't answer. So that's it, I said. I stood up and trying to hold in the frustration, trying to curb the urge to yell at her. And she didn't apologize or say she was sorry that I came all this way. Just not a word. Just an embarrassed stare. And now the locals were staring at me, so all I said was, yeah, okay. And I turned and walked out and headed for the highway. What else could I do? And of course, I've thought about those few minutes in that restaurant many years ago. And at first I used to get angry when I thought about it, but now I realize I was just too dumb to know how to handle the situation, to be able to understand what she was thinking, what she might have been going through, what I could have done differently. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Should have known what it would have been like to live in a town of 600 people and be faced with my walking in that day, even if she did want to see me or decided after our weekend together that she was going to break up with the guy at home. But I've thought about her a lot these past few months. Why? I don't know. I've been in a few serious relationships since then, but none with that overwhelming passion I felt that first weekend we were together, and I guess I'm hoping to recapture it. Just to fall in love with that same sense of abandon I felt that summer. Yeah, right. I'm probably just kidding myself. Denial. I just know she's never really vacated my heart. Sometimes I wonder if I went up there I could find her.